I figured I'd do a video talking about two particular things that I've been doing in recent months. Yeah, months is probably the proper term in this situation, all things considered. For anyone that's interested, don't fully know how many there that would be interested, but there's probably some people that would be interested. I could probably think of one person that's most likely interested. And, well, you know what? That's good enough for me at this point. So, as you would probably know by this point, assuming you've watched some of my recent videos, for one reason or another, you would know that I've been working on Spirit Thoughts and Project M Aesthetics. These are two ongoing series that are worked on whenever I feel like it, basically. And that's the best way to describe it. But okay, let's get into specifics. The first video that you would see when looking at the playlist for Spirit Thoughts is a video where I talk about the Nintendo Switch as well as Breath of the Wild. It's the only time I used the word review in a video. The reason that is because I honestly didn't feel like the term fit for me. I didn't feel like what I was doing was like a traditional review, so to speak. You know, I didn't do some of the stuff that other people that do reviews do. Stuff like that. It was also made at a time before I had this microphone as well as a capture card, so quality is not the best for that, as well as the two videos after, or at least the one video after. I think I might have had the capture card by the third one. Yeah. The videos that I made on the Master Trials as well as Champion's Ballad are both referred to as thoughts, because I felt that was a more appropriate term to use. They're my thoughts on something, about part of a game. My thoughts on the DLC. And those, after the Champion's Ballad, there was not really much else going on with that at that point. No other video was done for quite some time, like a couple years. I did think about making a video on Sonic Mania at one point, but I ended up deciding against it because so many people had already done it by that point. I felt like I was a bit late to the party. Like, there was not much that I could really add to the table at that point. I felt like, well, better people have already made videos on it, so what's the point of me doing it? Wouldn't really stop me now. Sonic Mania is on the table now with the new format, but at the time I didn't really think it would work. And the next video that came out related to this was the Cadence of Hyrule video. So, Cadence of Hyrule came out, coincidentally, the day before, my family and I had to take a little trip somewhere. So, I think I ended up beating the game, like, that particular day. Not the day it came out, the day after it came out. Which was the day we set out to the trip. And at that point, I'm like, this is a really cool game. I want to talk about it. So, I'm bringing it up with one of my friends. I brought up the idea on it, and he thought that it was something that I should potentially do. So I was set on making the video at that point. I was definitely going to make a video on the game sometime after I got back from the trip. But, so then I'm just wondering, well, what would I call it? The last two videos were just referred to as thoughts. Not that descriptive of a thing. What could I call it? Tried thinking on some things related to my name, my username. The one that stuck out was strictly Spirit Thoughts. 'Cause, well, it's short compared to trying to fit the entire username in, but it seemed like it fit well. When working on the video, it's like, so, it's informative, I'm explaining stuff about the game, but I let myself have fun with it. So let's do our latency calibration and get started with this. 0.000000 milliseconds. Neat. Something, try and find something that I could do to maybe entertain, I suppose. Cadence of Hyrule is a bit light in that aspect, I would say. Only a few instances of it. Some are kind of subtle, I would say. Like a few instances where I use text to, make it look like characters are saying stuff. It was also the first time that I really tried to do particular timing of stuff. Most noticeable at the part where I bring up how doing a particular thing without having the shield up seemed to have caused me a lot of deaths, which I ended up using as a segue to talking about what happens when you die. Also, try not to move into the same spot an enemy is moving to unless you have your shield out. I think this caused me a lot of deaths. Speaking of which, I also had a brief pause in between both parts of that to go through that whole little death animation that Link does in Cadence of Hyrule, 'cause I figured it worked well for that. Then there was also the part where I bring up the fact that when you are staying idle for long enough as Link, he starts doing a foot tapping animation. And when Link is idle for long enough, he starts doing this little foot tapping animation. I don't know, there's something about it that just sits well with me. Even he likes this music. The whole thing where I just have that part playing, that part of footage playing while adding other GIFs of that animation in tune with the music that was playing, at least for what I assume to be like, timed with the music. I think that was thought of during editing, 'cause for the intro thing, I got the gif of Link playing the lute from the game. That was only possible because his sprites were already ripped at that time. They were already on VG Resources, so I was able to get his entire sprite sheet as well as recompile the animation. So I ended up also doing the same thing for his idle animation. And decided to use it for something. The Hands of Hyrule video is very short compared to the one that comes after it. And that's mainly because it's a decently short game. It was part of the reason why I included a blooper reel at the end, because I felt like I could allow it. And it also helped to serve that, well, I'm still a person by the end of the day. Reading scripts is something that I'm actually started doing for Cadence of Hyrule. Though, now that I think about it, I remember there was a previous time that I tried writing a script for a video, and it was actually another Thoughts video, but it was scrapped due to I wanted to have one of my friends who knew a bit more about one of the games that was used to inspire this game to, co-op, the collab. He was down to it, but never really got to fully finishing the script for that, because there was only so much of the script that I myself could write, and I think he was just too busy with his internship at the time to do anything, so I shelved it, and I think all the gameplay footage I recorded for the game was gone. I'm not sure if I bring the idea back. To be honest, I'm kinda glad it didn't happen. I don't fully know. Something about the script, from what I remember, I'm not fully sure about some of the stuff with it. I think it might have been going a bit too jokingly with some of the stuff I wrote. Might have just had, too many jokes going on right after the other, so might not have worked out very well. Then we get to the banjo video. Now, this was obviously created about sometime after Banjo's announcement in Smash. Because of his announcement in Smash, Banjo kept coming into my mind. I kept thinking about Banjo occasionally throughout certain things, and so Nuts and Bolts was actually a game that I kept thinking back to when thinking, well, what would I do next? What game would I cover next for Spirit Thoughts? Nuts and Bolts came to mind. And so eventually I'm like, alright, let's go with Nuts and Bolts. As stated in the video, I feel like I'm in an interesting position when it comes to Banjo-Kazooie, with Nuts and Bolts being the first game that I've played and introduced me to Banjo and Kazooie. as characters as well as the series. Something that I felt was different from most other people that talk about Banjo. I'm pretty sure most of them actually started with either Banjo-Kazooie or Tooie. Most likely starting with Kazooie, though. And so I'm like, well, that could bring up some different perspectives. Another thing was the whole deal with the pause screen gag. Right before Banjo, Kazooie, and Grunty are about to fight, we get a very unconvincing pause screen. You're just gonna put the word pause in some generic font in the middle of the screen and have it go from red to black? Alright, well I can play that game too! Wait, was that? That was something that, believe it or not, I thought of before recording the footage? And that's because that particular part of the game, that particular moment, was something that I remembered very well. So I'm just like, huh. So the text, it's a very unconvincing pause screen, as I said. They just have everything stay in their last position and just have some generic pause text in the middle of the screen, going from red and black. Red to black. So I'm just like, well, what if I get all the assets for the Banjo-Kazooie pause screen and then just put that in the video at that point? Talk about how unconvincing the pause screen is. Say that, I can play that game too! And, just instantly get cut off by a pause screen. That... That particular gag, though, as you know, a lot of assets are custom. I couldn't really find most of the icons used for the pause screen or UI in general, so I custom vectored it for all the ones that I couldn't find. Obviously, I used a sprite of Gruntilda for the spot for quit game, save and quit, which became Alt F4 in my pause screen gag, which if you don't know, Alt F4 closes the currently active program or window, whatever is currently selected. So, yeah, I just felt like it was a funny thing of text to add for that. As you know, the logo did change for Spirit Thoughts. Still the same basic premise, but I did some work with the text to make it a bit less plain. It's not really using a custom typeface, it's still using the Hylia serif font, just using some clever masks and stuff to get stuff to look the way that I wanted. The whole thing with the whole thing with Banjo and Kazooie saying stuff occasionally throughout the video, there was going to be some more instances of it, but they were either cut or made to not interrupt the flow. The main instance of making it not take up time was when talking about the game's physics. Kazooie has some dialogue that I put in for a particular reason, but I didn't have Kazooie actually use her voice clips or anything besides the blinking animation for her icon, because if you do it that one particular way too much, it starts to interrupt the flow a bit too much. It was a fine balance that I felt like I needed to handle. In fact, during the end of the video, there was a particular set of exchanges between Banjo and Kazooie. Oh. So yeah, basically, the basic rundown of the exchange is after bringing up, doing the in between those are my thoughts on the matter. Feel free to share your thoughts if you feel like it, and I'll see you guys next time. And the thing with now watch Nuts and Bolts 2 get announced now that Banjo's in Smash. Kazooie was going to, state her mind about instead of the game or stuff, me, in her usual way, kinda get a little uncalled for after that last statement of Watch Nuts and Bolts 2 get announced now that Banjo's in Smash. Not necessarily bad, just a bit more insulting than before. She would end up, storming off, supposedly, to which Banjo would more or less do the usual Kazooie, and then just be like, oh, my apologies, Mr. Spirit, and then also supposedly go off to find Kazooie. The reason why that particular exchange was, why the concept of that exchange was cut was due to one thing. Its video length. The video itself is over 21 minutes. And I felt like it wasn't quite something that needed to be in there. It probably wouldn't. I don't think it would have made the video any better if it was. unless you want to have a interpretation of a video game character insulting me all the time at the end of the video, in which case I don't know what to say to you. But you do you, I suppose. That's about all I can say on that front. There isn't really too much of note for Four Swords Adventures. I was originally planning on trying a Blender animation for the intro. You know, all the four swords doing stuff. Shadow Link would show up, throw down the giant bomb. Red would run off to screen left while the other three ran to screen right. Then, 5 seconds later, Red would run across the screen again. That was the basic idea, more or less. I didn't end up doing it because it seemed a bit complicated for me at the time. Still would be complicated today. But, yeah, in the end, I just stuck with sprites. I did like the way that I was able to get everything to work for that one. It's also the first time that I tried making a completely unique thumbnail for it, based on part of the startup sequence for the game, which is why it looks the way it does. Obviously, I had to improvise Shadow Link. He mainly uses his in-game design, but I gave him the purple hair for the, from the, manga as a bit of a reference, as well as some color contrast, I suppose. I mean, it made it match with the darkness that he has. Next up is the Project M stuff. For some reason, I just really felt like wanting to talk about Project M and the legacy that it still has. Obviously, part of the thing with Project M's legacy goes down to the legacy builds of the game. XP and T. However, that isn't the entirety of it. But I will definitely say that it was very important for me to include them in the video of Project M's legacy, because they basically keep Project M going in one way, as well as expanding upon it in their own ways. XP brings in new fighters and stuff. Meanwhile, Legacy T expands aesthetics, makes a lot more tournament focused aesthetics to be used, as well as features. You can really see how the role modding scene has been changing through Legacy TE's development, as stuff like Masquerade and now custom my music is being able to be made a lot easier for people to work with, as well as not cause problems on Wii for the custom my music side of things. It's still being worked on. When it gets finished, it might end up in a TE build. I can't really say. I don't really work on TE. But I'm pretty sure it's a possibility. The way that Legacy is in the thumbnail for the video, it looks a bit like the Legacy TE logo, but not exactly. And that's mainly because Legacy TE uses a custom version of the font. The font that I used in the video is basically the regular. It's a regular version. Legacy TE. The Legacy builds use a custom version of the font, so stuff is a bit different with how the letters look. And, well, for reasons that font is a private font, pretty sure only David has access to it. Maybe the other people on his team have. Maybe some other people on the Legacy team have access to it. I don't fully know. I would have to ask. But it doesn't really matter in the long run now, does it? Theoretically, something that I could have done was ask David for like a PNG of just the word Legacy in the style of the Legacy TE font. But I didn't feel like it was necessary. Didn't really feel like it. Wanted to just, you know what? Just put it together the best I could myself. Just use the regular font. It was serviceable. Nothing necessarily wrong with it. Will say though, the A looks a bit less like an A than it probably should. Working on the video, obviously did have to do research. Most of the research for the XP and TE side of things was all in one place, believe it or not, and that is a QA video from David V. Kimball and Worstonut on the Legacy TE channel. They went through the development of both builds. So it was very important for that one. Getting the info for PM required a bit more searching. I think it was mainly found on the PM Wiki site last I checked. I'm pretty sure that's where I got most of it from. And re-implementing directional air dodging with its wave dashing. And with it, wave dashing. And re-implementing directional air dodging. And with it, air dashing. Air dash. Air dashing! This is not a Sonic game! Despite Sonic being... Sonic's in the game, but it's not a Sonic game. It's a Smash Brothers game. Air dashing! What type of blunder is that? Some things arguably could have been clarified a bit better. I think there may have been some slight confusion on some aspects of the video. Like, since I only talked about one build at a time, it goes from XP to TE. But as you know, TE wasn't real. It wasn't. They didn't start development after the release of XP, and that was not really something that I said in the slightest, but I can understand some potential confusion from it based on lack of clarity. The development of T started during development of XP. I just wanted to focus on talking on one build at a time instead of trying to go back and forth between aspects. After making the video on Project M's Legacy, there was something else that I ended up thinking of some time after. And that was looking at characters' aesthetics. People talk about the movesets of characters all the time, but I kind of feel like the aesthetics of a character don't get that much attention. So I decided to actually take time to compare on how the aesthetics of characters changed throughout PM, as well as Legacy TE. Legacy TE it's important to me. I think it's a very important part of the brawl modding community. And considering that Legacy TE is mainly... its main thing is just aesthetics, it was pretty easy for me to decide to include it in Project M aesthetic videos. Link was the first video that was made. Toon Link is the second. In between the first two videos, which part of it has to do with how long of a gap there was between the two videos. But, so the first video. The original thumbnail for it, which lasted until near the time Toon Link's video started being worked on, was not the best. It was serviceable, but I don't know, it didn't have a clear identity. Didn't really mesh well. There was some good ideas, but wasn't as good as the thumbnail for PM's Legacy. The same could be said for the intro animation. You know, at that point I'm just like, well, it's going to be a series. I'm going to make an intro for it. The best thing about the original intro was just the animation for the PM logo. That was the best part about it. And to put it into perspective, I actually had to reanimate it myself. Obviously, I wasn't looking blankly, because I was referencing the actual strap screen animation, but I reanimated the entire thing myself. Reason for it was I couldn't actually import the animation files into Blender. I think it was because I didn't export it to the proper file format, but I don't remember. So that old intro was there. One thing that I noticed in the video, which was something that is present on other videos on my channel, which was part of the reason why it took me so long to make Toon Link's video, was, well, the video quality was a bit fuzzy, and that was due to having to use the 40i output of the Wii and putting it through an AV to HDMI converter, which upscaled it to 1080 or 720, depending on what it was set at the time. And it just made everything look fuzzy. 40i is not that good. For that, it makes everything look fuzzy. So, I'm just like, well, I don't want to get too far with this, with it looking like this. I want it to be better. So I waited till I was able to use 480i output on the Wii. And after I got it, then you were getting ready to get work done. The thumbnail change, the aesthetic of the thumbnail, that came about because I don't fully know where the idea came into my head. All I know is that I did try to recreate the ultimate challenger approach screen before, but the background was not working. So I don't fully know what gave the idea in my head, but it was just like, well, what if I use the background, the PM background, and use that as a basis for the Challenger approach. Make that the thumbnail. So I went and put it together, and it looked pretty decent. There was some variation on the text, but it didn't take too long to sort it. Originally, I was going to keep the old intro just to make it consistent throughout, but eventually I'm just like, at some point, I was just like, no, I can't. It doesn't look that good. It can be better. So I reused as much of it as I could, which was basically the entire PM animation, and worked from there. Making that intro required me to use render layers and compositing, and that was because of the light that is behind the silhouette. To be able to have its alpha work properly, it had to be on its own render layer. Otherwise, it wouldn't look the best. So, yeah. It, took a while to get everything working with it, but it looks cool. Glad that I put it together. And something that I do want to briefly mention when it comes to the Toon Link video. So, one of the places where I shared the video was PM Nexus. I talked about them in the end screen for I believe the Link aesthetic video. So I share it, and then someone brings up, like, not mentioning the fact that PM shrunk Toon Link's head size? What? So, it was something that wasn't mentioned in the video for sure, but mentioning something like that confused me. So I decided to look into it a bit, and, yeah, I'm gonna call that a myth. There is no evidence in Project Jam's files that seems to dictate Toon Link's head being reduced in its size. So, all of Brawl Link's costume, well, all of Brawl Toon Link's costumes, same goes for Brawl Link's costumes, but that's not that's beside the point. Brawl Toon Link's costumes are loaded on disc. They're loaded on the disc. They were unmodified. So the only way that they could have modified size would be to go through his entire animation files and change it for every animation. Nothing shows any sign of that. The only thing that could potentially be the case was that they was talking about Outset Link's costumes having his head size reduced. But I don't see that being the case either. For one thing, most of the objects used for Outset Link are the same as Brawl Link. So, for instance, the clothes he wears, they're one object, yes. You know what object it comes from? His tunic. Basically the same mesh. I believe later the mesh was updated to fix the way that the bottom parts of his legs looked, because they still had the meshes for where the boots were, so it didn't look right. Now, the Outset Link costumes also all have a model for the belt buckle that is completely culled out. So, yeah, I don't see it very likely that they would have made Toon Link's head size too big to begin with for Outset Toon Link, 'cause it's pretty likely that it's the same exact mesh from the Brawl model, taken directly from the Brawl model. So, yeah. I'm gonna go with false on that. Let's go false. Oh god, I've been playing a lot of... I've been playing Portal 2 recently, so I just quoted Portal 2 there. Points to anyone who can tell me where and when that line, or at least something similar to that line, is said in Portal 2. Trust me. But yeah. That's about all I can think of at the moment. Man, I think it might have been better in some of the early versions playing out in my head. But it wasn't like it was something that I could necessarily do then, because it was late at night. But, yeah. Just some insight as to stuff. I don't know, maybe someone got some enjoyment out of it? I'll, see you guys next time. whether it be spirit thoughts or Project M's aesthetics. See you guys then.